Okay, folks, so in this lesson, we're going to talk about midpoint formula, and we're going to start with a number line, and then we're going to go up to the coordinate plane. And there's a lot of similarity, so once you get one, you'll be good. A few things to consider up front, a little vocabulary. The midpoint is a point that divides a segment into two congruent segments. It cuts it exactly in half. Midpoint is equal distance or equidistant from both endpoints. So if we think about that as a small picture, if I have A at one end and B at the other, the midpoint is going to make AM congruent to MB, or the measurement of AM equal to measurement of MB. And the way we show that in a picture is we put little hash marks on it. So we use the word congruent, but in the picture we show it using those hash marks. So that way everything we say and write and everything we see in the picture is synchronized. So those little hash marks mean congruent to each other. And for that to happen, M has to be exactly in the middle between A and B, the midpoint. Our second term here is a segment bisector, and a segment bisector is anything that intersects the segment at its midpoint. So anything that cuts it exactly in half. It could be a point, it could be a ray, it could be a line, it could be anything. The segment bisector is, in this example, the line going through AB. AB got bisected. So some simple terminology, but some important terminology. The bisector is the thing cutting the other thing in half. So in this case, we might say, I'll just put an L, line L is the segment bisector. Segment AB got bisected. And if we're going to say that, we would want to say which two parts are the resulting equal and congruent parts. So AM is congruent to MB. We never want to say it got cut in half. What is it? They are equal. What are they? So we want to clarify. L is the segment bisector. Segment AB was bisected. And segment AM is congruent to segment MB. Okay. All right, well, let's talk about getting into midpoint formula here. Effectively, we have one main formula to focus on. The midpoint is the average of the two endpoints. So x1 plus x2 equals 2. If I want the number exactly in between, halfway in between two other numbers, I take their average. So this is specifically when we have two numbers on a number line, but you're going to see that's going to work for us in the coordinate plane. So we're asked to find the midpoint of segment AB. I might want to draw segment AB just to get a visual, where A is at 8 and B is at 22. We are looking for the midpoint. So we are looking for that value right there. I'm going to call it M. That makes AM congruent to MB. So we're looking for the number exactly in the middle. And our formula says add the two endpoints and divide by 2. So take their average. And you can see our work here. Our work shows us 8 plus 22 divided by 2 is 15. So our answer here is 15. Now, if we wanted to, we can certainly use the distance formula to double check. And we can see our distance is 7, and then our distance from 15 to 22 is also 7. So we are equal distance. We do have the midpoint. Drawing a picture for these is a really good idea, but that's all we're using is our one formula. So we'll do one or two. Let's do number 1 first. And I'm just going to bring it out here on the right. Segment AB, so I'm going to draw myself a segment, AB. A is -4. B is 8. And it says find the midpoint. So we are looking for that point right there. We can call it whatever we want. That is exactly in the middle, making those two congruent. So for example, if we called it M, AM congruent to MB. Our formula says that the midpoint is equal to x1 plus x2 divided by 2. So x, or midpoint, or whatever you want to call it, it doesn't matter, equals negative 4 plus 8 divided by 2. So that's 4 divided by 2, or 2. So we're saying that that point is 2. Again, you can check your distance formula, and we find out that it is 6 units to A, it is 6 units to B. So we have the midpoint. And again, don't get confused by all the x's. x1 and x2 represents the two endpoints. In this case, it's really A and B, but it changes for every question. And then we have our midpoint. Let's look at number 2. They're asking for something different, but the way we're going to do it is exactly the same. Sorry. Number 2, I'm just going to bring it down here. So again, segment AB, right? So I need an A and a B. A is 10. B, I don't know. B is what we're looking for. The midpoint is 17, so the middle is 17. Now, you got to get those things plugged into the right spot. Our formula, again, our formula is the same formula. Midpoint equals x1 plus x2 over 2. Well, the midpoint here is 17. They told us that. One endpoint is 10. The other endpoint we don't know. That's the one we're looking for. We do a little cross multiplication. And of course, subtract 10, and we get 24. So this end has to be at 24. And again, we can check it using distance. 10 to 17 is 7 units, and 17 to 24 is another 7 units. So M is exactly in the middle. The big issue here is plugging things in correctly. The formula that we're using is very simple. Midpoint equals x1 plus x2 over 2. Midpoint equals x1 plus x2 over 2. Same formula, even though we were looking for different things. The way we substitute is where we have to be careful. Identify endpoint 1, endpoint 2, midpoint, and that way you can plug it in correctly. All right, we're going to step up to the coordinate plane and look at this formula carefully. Here's our midpoint formula on the coordinate plane. Remember, on the coordinate plane, it's not just one number. It's a pair, ordered pair, x and y. So for the x's of the midpoint, it equals x1 plus x2 over 2. That's the exact same formula that we just used. And for the y's, the y value of the midpoint, well, that's y1 plus y2 over 2. So again, notice it is the exact same formula. We're just doing it twice. Once for the x values and once for the y values. It's the same formula being used twice. Well, let's take a look at it. So let's take a look at number 8. And again, I'm just going to bring it out to the right. I might graph it. If I graph it, it gives me a nice idea of what to expect. S is at 4, negative 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, negative -1, and t is at 6, 0. So there's t at 6, 0. And let's see the directions say, find the coordinates of the midpoint. So this is the segment we're looking for the midpoint. So I'm going to make myself a little note over here. I'm looking for the midpoint. That's what I'm trying to fill in. These are the endpoints. So S I can call point 1. That's x1, y1. T is point 2. So that's x2, y2. And then the middle, that's xm, ym. And my formula says use the x's. The middle equals the first end plus the second end over 2. So the x value for the middle equals 4 plus 6 over 2. The x value of the middle equals 5. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing, but for the y's. The y value of the middle, the y of one end, plus the y of the second end over 2. So the y value of the middle, in this case, equals -1 plus 0 over 2. So ym equals -1/2. So my midpoint is 5, -1/2. And I can go to my graph and make sure that that makes sense. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, down 1. Yeah, that makes sense for my graph. Now, I might not have guessed those values from my graph, so I have to do it algebraically. And again, notice we did the same exact thing twice, once for the x's and once for the y's. It's exactly what we did for the number line. Now, that being said, let's do another example. I'm going to scroll up a little bit so we can see. I have a little more room here. And we're going to do number 12. So let's see, our directions say use the endpoint R and the midpoint M. So wait, R is one end and M is the middle. That's really important. I'm just going to rewrite this. R, which is 6, 0, that's one end. So I'm going to call that x1 and y1. M, which is at 2, 0, that's the middle. So that's x middle, y middle. We're looking for the other point, so we're looking for S. That's what we're looking for right there, S, which is x2, y2. It's the second endpoint. Labeling this correctly is absolutely critical. We have to be able to plug it into the formula correctly. So I need to understand what points I'm using. I'm not looking for the middle anymore. I'm looking for the end. So I can plug this in correctly. Now, before I do that, I might make a graph. Make sure I understand what I'm really trying to do here. R is at 6, 0. M is at 0, 2. And if I read my directions carefully, M is in the middle. So that means S has to be somewhere out here. Now, I don't know where, but if I don't get a negative number for X, I know I made a mistake. R was on the right. S has to be on the left. So I'm really using the graph as a picture to set my expectations, not to actually get my answer. I'm going to get my answer algebraically. How are we going to do that? We're going to use the same formula we've been using for all of our examples. We're going to do it once for the x's. We're going to do it once for the y's. So let's work on the x's. X of the middle equals the first end plus the second end over 2. Well, x of the middle is 0. The first end is 6. And I don't know the other end. That's what I'm trying to find out. It's at 0, 6 plus x, negative 6 for x. And now I'm going to do it again for the y's. So again, y middle, y1 plus y2 over 2. The y of the middle, they gave us is 2. Y from the first end is 0. The other y we're looking for. So I got 4. So the point we're looking for is S. It looks like I got negative 6, 4. And let's make sure that makes sense. If I go back to my graph, negative 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and up 4. So 1, 2, up 4. So my S is really here. Well, I didn't know that, but now if I look at it, these look congruent. They actually look pretty good to me now. We found the other, we found the other endpoint. This thing keeps moving. So we found the other endpoint is at negative 6, 4. Again, the biggest challenge there is plug things in correctly. Identify your midpoint, identify your two endpoints, and plug it in correctly. We're using the exact same formula. We're doing the middle is the average of the ends. We did it once for the x's. We're doing it again for the y's. And then just plugging things in correctly. All right, well, that is midpoint formula used for the number line and for the coordinate plane.